You're listening to msp-waves radio. I am your host, Agrode, currently witness 11 on the Steem blockchain. I'm bringing to you the Steem Witness Forum. This is where the top 20 witnesses are able to go gather and just have an open discussion. I'm here to facilitate a discussion. The witnesses are certainly welcome to say whatever they'd like. They can ignore my questions and just sort of talk about whatever they so please. I do have some prompts. But they're all suggestions as opposed to anything else. So the format for these things is that typically I like to start with Anjarki. Anjarki is the head of content for Steemit. And just for a little language here, Steem is a blockchain. It is also a currency. Steemit is a company that is run by Ned, and Anjarki is the director of content for that company. And then lastly, Steemit.com is a browser-based interface to the Steem blockchain. So on the show, we're going to try not to use those words interchangeably. Steem is a currency and a blockchain. Steemit is a company, and Steemit.com is a website. So if you're new, hopefully that's different, or hopefully you guys can handle that distinction. So what I want to do, and Anjarki, you have muted yourself. Hopefully all the witnesses that have gathered here, you guys can be on push to talk. I'm going to start just asking Anjarki some questions and just opening the floor with him so that he can sort of give us a perspective from, the Steemit business center there and what they're working on. And then from there, we'll open it up to everybody that's part of the panel today. So, without further ado, Anjarki, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great. The Steemit blog put out a pretty awesome update not that long ago, one that I know that this community is really excited about. I'm wondering if you want to start there, or I would just open it up to what's the talk around the water cooler? What's going on at Steemit HQ, and what's the buzz?
Yeah, so well, I like how you're starting off with a kind of educational, a little educational piece, and just to expand on that a little, Steemit's the company that originally released and then open sourced the Steem blockchain. And that's really, what we advocate for. And Steemit.com is the interface that we released to showcase what this amazing blockchain can do. And there's still quite a bit of confusion around this, I think, within the community. So that's why I think it's good that we kind of rehash some of these things. Now what we do, a big part of what we do, is we write code to be included in hard forks. And those are basically upgrades to the Steem blockchain. But we don't mandate these upgrades. Instead, we communicate with the community and the witnesses, many of whom are in here right now, and we hear what improvements they feel need to be made to that blockchain. And then because we have the best developers, I think the best blockchain developers in the world, but at the very least, they're obviously the people most expert in coding for Steem. We then try to create the code that's going to meet those demands that people feel are necessary, that there's consensus within the community are necessary for the blockchain. And then that code is included in the hard forks, and then ideally, assuming everybody wants it, the witnesses agree to it, they adopt it, and then the Steem blockchain gets upgraded. So the thing that we're talking about the most, although not really talking about as much as coding about, is the upcoming Hard Fork 20, which has, it's been in the works for a long time. The reason for that is predominantly that we wanted to front load a lot of work on scalability. And we did a lot of that work. And as while we were also doing work on smart media tokens and HiveMind, And we've now gotten to an inflection point where we've done enough on scalability, enough on communities, and enough on HiveMind where Hard Fork 20 is really becoming a top priority. And so we've really been focusing our efforts on Hard Fork 20. And I'm happy to say that we should be able to release that in the very near future. From the other sides of the organization, I think we've made great strides in our communications and talking about technical aspects of what we're doing. But I hope in the coming months, and I like to think that I filled you guys in a little early on what we'll be doing on those fronts. And now I'm filling you in that, assuming everybody in here thinks this is a good idea, but I'm thinking that we might even tone down the level of technical updates now that we've kind of got a good communications protocol going forward, and maybe expand out into more broadly comprehensible stuff and start talking about things that everybody can understand, or talking about even the technical details in more broadly comprehensible terms, and really start trying to educate people from outside the Steem universe on the Steem blockchain and the benefits of integrating it into their stack, and educate even Steem users on how they can talk about this stuff, how they can understand it, and that's I think those are the broad strokes of what we've been working on. Obviously, it's summer, and I think we're trying to enjoy the nice weather wherever we are in the world.
Yeah, I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. We want to know what are the technicalities that are being changed in the blockchain, and we want to know, well, what are the results of those? What does that practically mean? And so I think it's not an either or. You're not like, this is a community that isn't going to be satisfied until we know everything that we can know. And it's hopefully that's a good sign. It means that this community is very interested in what you guys are working on and what you're building, and hopefully going to be quite receptive to it. To that end, do you want to give kind of an overview or big picture of what is maybe you could go with like what is contained in Hard Fork 20 and Velocity, or sort of what is the spirit of Hard Fork 20 and Velocity? What does it aim to do?
Sure, I think I can. God, I'm probably not the best person to talk about that. I mean, one of the big ones is scaling the account creation process. It looks like the blockchain developers have really settled on an idea of discount account creation tokens. These are tokens that I believe, and again, remember, content director, not head of blockchain engineering. So just take everything with a grain of salt. But I believe the basic way that it works is that you'll be allocated a certain number of discount account creation tokens based on the amount of stake that you have. And so instead, and this will actually be replacing account creation through delegated Steem power. And, as with everything our blockchain engineers do, it always comes down to, is this a scalable solution with minimal attack vectors? Is it game theoretically secure? And is it scalable? Is this going to enable developers to create accounts at a very low rate or even free, while not endangering the long-term sustainability and scalability of the blockchain? And so a lot of it has to do with that. There's also, I think the stuff on resource credits is really cool. We're basically totally revamping the bandwidth rate limiting algorithm. We're actually, I believe we're replacing the bandwidth rate limiting algorithm with a resource allocation system. And these are internal tokens. They work behind the scenes. They're called resource credits. And it's basically leveraging an internal market that is really, there are no human actors in this market. It's just leveraging the benefits of a market to more precisely allocate resources of the blockchain. So basically, every resource that the blockchain consumes, things like RAM, things like CPU cycles, will be will be measured in terms of resource credits. And whatever actions people do, and it will require resource credits. And just like you had bandwidth before based on your SP, you'll get resource credits. And those resource credits will be consumed when you perform actions on the blockchain, and they will regenerate over time so that you can keep performing those actions. And the whole goal of this is really just to more efficiently allocate resources, but there's a secondary goal, which is to be able to communicate to you, the users, more precisely what you get for the Steem power that you buy. So we'll be able to more precisely tell you, like, you need X Steem power if you want to do that, because based on the current market availability and the resource demand of the network. The problem with the current bandwidth algorithm is that it's too imprecise. We can only say you need more. We can't say even how much more. And so the resource credit system, I mean, it's state of the art. I haven't seen any other blockchain team in the world working on this stuff. This is totally a new thing, a state of the art thing that only our blockchain developers could come up with. It's very advanced, and I think it's going to create a much better user experience. And theoretically, because it's going to be a more efficient way of allocating resources, you should be able to do more on the blockchain with the amount of SP that you have. So resource credits is another really cool thing. We've written quite a bit about it, so you can learn more about it if you go check out the Steemit blog posts. And then I think finally the big thing, I mean, there's lots of miscellaneous fixes. There's also a proposal, I believe, from the community, which would be great. It would be great to include more community submissions, community PRs to the hard forks. You know, and there's one about fixing the SPD peg. That could be included. The final one, I believe this is app-based. App-based will be is getting added to the Steem blockchain, and app-based is our scalability, our long-term scalability solution. It modularizes the blockchain and enables the creation of basically additional blockchains that sit on top of the Steem blockchain and can be used as plugins that developers query, as opposed to every developer in the world querying exactly the same database, Steemd. There'll be additional blockchains. It's basically decentralizing the decentralized Steem blockchain even further by creating these additional blockchains that can be queried. And I think that's those are the big ticket items of Hard Fork 20.
So there's quite a bit going on there. You know, that's not like a simple here's the two things. It's kind of a couple mega changes. So can you give us the heart of what we're attempting to do? Can you explain it? Like, I have some ideas of my interpretation of all the changes, but when you guys talk about that internally, what's the purpose of what we're doing with this?
That's a great question, and I always like to tell people, for some reason, that whatever we're talking about internally, it's usually a lot more boring than you think, in the sense that it's usually about, you know, the day-to-day issues, you know, maintaining Steemit.com, maintaining all of these nodes, dealing with bugs and things like that, and of course the technical details of implementing all of these solutions. Now, that being said, Hard Fork 20 is really, I guess, can be seen as the foundation of almost everything else we want to do after this. It ties into communities. It ties into scaling. It ties into HiveMind. So it's, you know,
Rocky. There's apparently we've lost the audio.
My audio?
You sound fine, but the chat's all complaining that there's no audio.
Okay.
Strange, it works for me.
Yeah, I think it was down temporarily.
We're too popular.
I think I just lost Aggie. I got you. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Are we still alive?
This feed is doing fine. People can hear this okay.
It looks like we have like maybe 70 people in the msp-waves broadcast right now. Maybe we're overloading Discord a little.
Yeah, I think that's a potential here. Globo says all good. Can you? All right, they can hear again. I think it was just a. I think we're good now. So sorry for the minor interruption there. So I guess, and Jarky, you were saying the big picture, they talk about the details and they get into the nitty gritty. It's kind of the foundation of the rest of what we're hoping to do. What is the big picture of what Steemit is trying to do?
Yeah, you know, I think one of the benefits of the witness system and the which includes, you know, community voting, is that it really enables us to go, okay, what do they want to do? And we're still focused on smart media tokens, communities, and scaling, and sign up. You know, these have been our 4 priorities all year. You know, everything else is, okay, what are the witnesses telling us we have to add in there? And when it comes to Hard Fork 20, it really comes down to what are the things that the community and the witnesses are telling us are absolutely necessary, and what is absolutely necessary to scale this blockchain, make SMTs a reality, make HiveMind a reality, which is communities, and make sign up way better and more scalable. And so you know, we're pretty focused on that. Honestly, you know, that's what I was talking about with respect to being boring. You know, we're not really talking about that much new things, as much as, you know, these simple problems, these simple 4 problems are not simple at all. They're insanely difficult. And, you know, it's what we've been talking about for a year, and really there's not much talking at all, because the engineers are just coding all day, every day, solving these problems, solving the existing problems, and Hard Fork 20 is just foundational to solving all these things. I mean, it's critical for SMTs, you know, and don't ask me how, but that's the type of stuff that they talk about is, well, this is why we have to accelerate this. Everybody wants SMTs. Well, if we want to do SMTs, we need app-based. If we want app-based, we need Hard Fork 20.
So this is all about gearing us towards a mass adoption. We're scaling the blockchain, and we're going to tokenize the internet. I mean, that seems to be roughly the plan, kind of blockchain, all the things.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we think that that we've got a really unique angle to how to tokenize the internet. You know, everybody else is kind of taking the head-on approach. And what always attracted me to Steem and Steemit was that we're taking more of the back end of we're backdooring it. We're going to existing applications, saying, you know, we've got this great blockchain that you can just pipe right into. We've got this great decentralized distribution mechanism that you can just pipe right into. And with SMTs, we're going to say, well, not only can you pipe into our decentralized distribution mechanism, but token distribution mechanism, but you can even customize your own decentralized token distribution mechanism. And, you know, it's all about making that a reality. You know, we try to remain consistent and focused on the same things. And yes, you're exactly right. It's all about tokenizing the content web, which is really, in my opinion, the internet as a whole.
So one of the themes for the witnesses today is what's coming after the three big changes. So we're going to have hard fork 20, which is velocity. We're going to get communities, and we're going to get SMTs. So those are the three things that I think are sort of on the 0 to 6 month horizon from the best sense that I can get. You know, are you guys still just totally in the day-to-day of that? Or has Steemit started discussing what's going to come after? When SMTs get launched, do you know what the focus is going to be after that? Like, I'm just trying, I think one of the things I can do on this forum is try to help plan ahead into and get consensus well ahead of time in terms of what do we think is the next biggest need. And we all the witnesses seem very well aligned with the goals of Steemit right now, that I think we're all totally on board that velocity, communities, and SMTs are awesome and what we want to do. Then the question is, what happens after that? I'm wondering if what's the water cooler talk at Steemit for that, or is that not even on the radar yet?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to answer that question. Just before I do, I just want to recap some other important additions to that are included in Hard Fork 20 that might be of interest to your audience. There are also some changes relating to curation and improving curation on the platform, as well as removing the 1 per 20-second comment limit. So people are going to be able to comment, reply to comments. You know, if you're a big user and you've got lots of comments on your post, sometimes it can be annoying to have to wait 20 seconds to reply to comments, but so that limit's being removed. It's going to be every 3 seconds now. And with respect to curation, where we've instituted a change to the 12-hour upvote lockout period, because that created a problem where you know, you can't upvote your own post in the last 12 hours, but somebody can downvote it. And so now there's like a linear drop off. So if somebody downvotes you at 12 hours, you know, at 11 hours and 59 minutes, you can counter that with an upvote. And you won't have, you know, it'll be slightly weaker. And anyway, so actually, no, I'm sorry, that's not how it works. Anyway, you can look for the details yourself, but there's a linear drop off instead of a clip or something like that. Anyway, to get to your point, with respect to after Hard Fork 20, I think that is a really important conversation to be having. With respect to what we're doing, yeah, I think the honest answer is that we have our nose to the grindstone, and we're really focusing on nailing HiveMind, you know, our future communities product, and the existing challenges that we've set up for ourselves. And I imagine that once we do execute on a lot of this stuff, that there will be you know, a significant debugging and re-evaluation period. Now, I think that that's a great opportunity for the community to come to a consensus around where it wants to go after that, because, you know, if we haven't formed our opinion, it should be much easier for everybody to come to a consensus about what changes should follow. As far as my personal opinion about what we should be thinking about with respect to what's coming afterwards, man, I guess we're just so focused on these upcoming changes that really nothing is coming to mind. It's just so hard to see past these changes. I'm certainly open to suggestions. Any ideas?
Well, I think that's going to be the next part of this, is that I want to, in the next 5 or 10 minutes, I want to sort of open this back up to all the witnesses and then start figuring out what we're all working on now, and then change the topic to, let's jump ahead 6 months. In 6 months, Velocity is here, Communities is here, and SMTs is here. Let's assume that the network hasn't crashed and everything is still functioning, and that the really brilliant blockchain engineers that we have at Steemit have successfully created code that launches and goes, you know, maybe not perfectly smoothly, but we get it up and running. We can start tokenizing the internet. We can start having kind of community accounts. These oracles start popping up, and we can scale to the public. Now what? So that's kind of the next piece to this, of what are the projects that the witnesses are working on today, and what do we think will be the priority 6 months from now, and then how do we sort of get in alignment to figure out where we need to be focusing and what we need to be working on. So I do have one suggestion now that I'm thinking about it, and I do want to take the conversation that way and open it up. My one suggestion would be that app-based is just the beginning of the scaling solution. There's going to be a whole lot of work that comes after that to really maximize Steem's scalability. And I think my recommendation, and of course this is just a suggestion, is that once we get SMTs out, once we get Hiveline out and running in the wild, I think it might be good to kind of pause, focus on making these products awesome, and then give the blockchain devs a healthy runway to really focus on maximizing app base and fully building it out, because there are several different ways to approach the problem of modularizing the blockchain, and some there's some that require less resources, but then as is always the case, the one that requires less resources is less robust and less scalable. It's more of a short-term solution. There's also more complex, more difficult solutions that will require a little more time, but if they have that time, it could build up infinite runway. And so I think that would be a good place to take the discussion, is, how much time and resources can we allocate, and how much leeway can we give to the blockchain devs to build out app base and really make it as robust as possible. All right, I want to switch and just allow any of the witnesses that are part of this, if you guys want to ask Androrki a question, now is a great time for you to do that. And after that, we'll switch and kind of go out of what's going on at Steemit mode and switch to, hey, what are the witnesses doing now? And then the last piece will be, where do you think we need to be going in the future? So witnesses, if you guys have questions for Androrki, this would be a great time.
Yeah, one of the questions was already asked in the chat. Do you have a release date for Hard Fork 20 and or SMTs?
And that's Luke Stokes speaking. Hey Luke. No release date on SMTs or Hard Fork 20, but I am willing to commit to Hard Fork 20 being done very soon. So, we understand that we have serious delays on many of our products. We're not asking that people forgive us or forget, but we're trying to learn from our mistakes and not set false expectations, which is why I, can't give specific dates on that stuff. But Hard Fork 20,
I swear, I believe it will be ready very, very soon. We're making a lot of progress. That's why we've been posting about all of the changes that we've made. As far as I understand, most of the coding is already done.
Awesome.
Other questions from the witnesses for Androrky?
No other questions?
Perhaps not specifically.
It's because I'm just so thorough and open and revealing about everything we're doing, you know?
You are now.
Yeah, everything has been clarified. We're all good. The black box has been opened. It's all fantastic.
Here's
I'm
one
just going to
maybe.
stop posting. Okay.
Androrky, do you know what Steemit Inc.'s opinion is? Maybe not necessarily everything, but just an opinion on vote bots and vote buying.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, we're really committed to, and you know, I do worry about sounding like I'm blowing smoke up our asses and kind of sounding disingenuous, but you know, I am really trying to be forthright when I talk about us, and you know, I work here for a reason, and a big part of that reason is that I see my coworkers, I see what they focus on, I see their characters, and it's awe-inspiring. And so when I say that, you know, we're really focused on the important things, they really focus on what they think are important, and as I said, you know, SMTs, scalability, sign up, and all that stuff. Like when it comes to other things like voting bots, you know, it's not that they don't care, it's that, you know, we're really, you know, one of the things I love about the resource credit system is that it shows just how adaptable market technology is. And the idea that you can even leverage markets that have no conscious actors really trading the assets, to me, I was like, wow, that's such an elegant solution. And so I think when it comes to things like voting bots, we really look at it from like a game theoretical perspective, from like a scalability perspective. We're like, you know, are there long-term negative consequences for scalability? Is this an attack vector on the blockchain itself? Or is this a response of a market being in place? Is this an inevitable consequence of having a pretty free market on content and giving users the freedom? And you know, if we go down that road, and again, I don't want to put words into the mouths of my coworkers, because like I said, you know, really they're talking about much more boring stuff, much more technical stuff, and much more mission critical stuff for the software that we develop. But you know, I think the overall attitude is, you know, if we go down that road of saying, okay, we don't like bid bots, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? Is that going to disrupt the ability for people to come to a consensus? Is that going to commit us to all kinds of work? Is that going to create this like fat tail of work to deal with this problem, to fix the problem, when the reality might be that, you know, the market might fix it, you know, people can create user interfaces that fix it, you know, all kinds of solutions. You know, this is, you know, bid bots are an unpredicted outgrowth of a market system. And it may be the case that solutions to the problem will emerge from the same system. And so should we divert our resources to that, or should we focus on the things we know everybody wants? And so I think that's, you know, when we're talking about an organization as a whole, like when you said, you know, the opinion of Steemit, I feel like you kind of paused and laughed, because it's like, Steemit has no opinion. It's an organization, you know. But you know, the same goes for what I'm saying here. You know, I'm trying to state the overall gist of how the organization functions, when the truth is that it's a group of individuals all just doing their jobs all the time. But I would say that I think that pretty fairly explains how we look at these situations. I don't know if that's a satisfying answer.
Anybody else have some questions that they want to toss in Jorky?
Could you just give a quick update on your perception on like developer burnout and all that? Do you think everyone at the team there is well rested and excited and encouraged, or is it kind of like everyone's frazzled?
I think we're doing better. We've hired a lot. We've grown the organization a lot. Brought on many more engineers.
Do you want to say how many people? Do you know how big is Steemit right now?
I honestly don't know. I'd love to get an answer for you on that. I know that people are frustrated that we aren't more transparent about how many people work in the organization. The honest to God reason for that is that everybody is so focused on their work. There are so many fires to be putting out, and we do have to walk that line of burnout versus getting the important stuff done, and you can't really have it both ways, where like either you can make everybody happy and do everything that everybody wants done and totally burn everybody out, or really focus on the necessary things, of which growing the organization is a project unto itself, and it's a freaking tough project. Finding great developers, especially great blockchain developers, and that's distinguishing between blockchain developers and blockchain engineers. Blockchain engineers are a whole nother thing. It's really tough stuff. I think that the most critical bottleneck with respect to developer burnout is the size of the organization. The smaller the organization is, just the more everybody has to do. So I think it's pretty good. People are taking their vacations. We've got a vacation policy in place. We've got a people person who's tasked with maintaining the health of the organization and looking out for the people in it. That's her job. We had to find that person. We had to integrate that person, but she's doing a great job. And so I think we're good. I think we could do better, but I think the organization is trying. So I'm feeling good about developer burnout.
Cool, thank you.
Sure, great question.
All right, one last. We got time for maybe one last question from a witness if they'd like to ask Jorky something.
I kind of feel like I should just do an interview with you because I got so many more, but I'm opening up for other people.
Yeah, we could do that sometime. I'm happy to do it.
That'd be fun.
All right, why don't you get one last in, Luke, and then we'll call it a time with Jorky and switch to full witness.
All right. Well, I mean, this might be a little more controversial, but like, what is your perception of like Ned's growth as a CEO and how he's kind of responding to market forces and EOS launching and other potential threats as it might be perceived to this head start that Steemit.com, the website built on the blockchain, has had? How do you feel about the kind of leadership in the organization?
Yeah, that is definitely a controversial question. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think I can answer that. I'm very impressed with Ned's leadership. I think that when he's under such a fine microscope, and he's really busy. I mean, as far as people that I'm concerned about burnout, Ned is the person I think we're all most concerned about, because the demands on his time are just unfathomable. Like, honestly, when I think about it, I'm just like, I couldn't do that. I don't think, I used to want to be an entrepreneur, and when I look at his schedule and everything that he has on his plate and the demands people want to make on him, it's really kind of scary to see. And I think he's doing a great job of handling it and learning how to handle it. He's not perfect, but I do think he's growing very rapidly. And it's really tough to, what am I trying to say? The communications you see, one of the other things I've learned from my experience here is that, when you write, when you create content, when you answer people's questions, and there's such an intense spotlight on what you're doing, the impression that people come away with is never 100% accurate, right? They're not seeing you as a person. They're seeing you as this entity, and they're seeing you as the response to the questions you're being asked. And, you know, it's kind of like that uncertainty principle where, you know, the moment you're looking at something, you change that thing. And, you know, everybody looking at everything we're doing, you know, it changes the way they perceive you. And you know, I think he's done a great job of leading the company. You know, when I look back at the decisions that he's made and the decisions we've made as an organization, you know, I think that's the best way to judge. That's the fairest way to judge a CEO, is looking back at the decisions that got made. You know, do we still feel that those decisions were right? Because that is so hard to do. When you look at all of the other projects in the space, I mean, how many times have we been there where there's a new competitor that's going to do this differently than Steem, and they're going to totally kill Steem, and they're going to kill Steemit or whatever, and they're going to do something different. They're going to get rid of the 7-day limit. They're going to do this. They're going to do that, and everybody's like, change everything you're doing and fix this thing that this company is claiming, because they're going to come online and they're totally going to disrupt you. And, you know, when we look back and we see our commitment to smart media tokens and and hive mind, and, you know, these were you know, they're big. They required a lot of resources, right? These are big projects. And I think the fact that, you know, people tend to forget the things that everybody agrees on, you know, and, you know, you just focus on the thing that we disagree. And I think it's important to shift attention back and realize that, you know, we made these commitments to expend a large amount of resources on hive mind, scalability, signups, smart media tokens, and the fact that there's such widespread consensus among the community. In fact, what the community is most upset about, which is totally fair, is that these things are behind schedule. They want these changes so bad that they're mad we haven't delivered them sooner. And I actually think that in a way that's great, because it shows that we've made the right decision. Are there areas on which Ned can improve? Absolutely. Are there areas where we can improve as an organization? Absolutely. I mean, I think there's huge overlap there. It comes down to communication, you know, and communication has always been our weakness. We have amazing engineers, but we're not great at communicating. And I think I'm telling you, we're doing a huge amount of work on that as an organization. We've got a real advocacy team now. We've got a head of communications. We've got the beginnings of a real advocacy staff. We're working on you know, improving our branding, improving out how we talk about this stuff. You know, it ties into what I was saying before about talking in more comprehensible terms, not everything being so technical. And that's something we're doing on a organization-wide scale. Yeah, you know, we're trying. So yeah, you know, I hope that's a good answer to that question. You know, I'm incredibly impressed by Ned's ability to learn. We know he's young, and he's growing as fast as anyone could be expected to grow. And so yeah, I'm super impressed with him. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
All right, I think that's gonna do it for Anjarki's segment here. Thank you for taking the time to kind of give us the water cooler perspective from Steemit HQ. I think that helps give guidance to the witnesses and helps give us some kind of direction on what you guys are thinking, and therefore what do we need to be thinking about that may or may not be in alignment with that. So I want to switch this to like going back full mode into top 20 witness forum. And Anjarki, if you have time, you're welcome to hang out and chime in on some of the things that are said. But I'd love for us to start with some guy, and then we'll go down the list and just everybody can sort of say who they are and what they're working on now, and then we'll switch gears and start talking about what we think the future is going to hold in about 6 months from now, when that's when I imagine that all 3 of these changes are going to take place. So let's try to put maybe it's not that exact timeline, but let's imagine that we're there and figure that out. But for now, let's just start with an introduction. Some guy, please go first.
Okay, my name is SomeGuy123, also known as Chris. I'm currently a rank 9 witness on Steemit. Oh, Steem. I'm responsible for a non-Steem, that's the account creation service. I'm responsible for Privex, which is web hosting and servers you can pay for with Steem, along with other currencies. I've built various projects through my 2 years, I think I've been here now. My tools are used by many witnesses, like Steem in a Box and the Steem feed. What I'm currently working on is a complete overhaul of a non-Steem to simplify recovery, payments, etc., as well as some services to help out with RPC nodes. RPC nodes are currently approaching 600 gigabytes of RAM needed. It's not ideal. So I'm doing a lot of experimentation with the hardware we have at Privex to see if I can get a more scalable hardware solution, as well as benchmarks on different file systems, caching, etc., to see if we can start putting things on NVMe drives. Because currently a lot of RPC nodes are struggling with the massive amount of RAM needed.
All right, I'm Aggrod. I founded this Discord channel that we're all in, the Peace, Abundance, and Liberty Network, and then helped build the radio station that we're all listening to called msp-waves. I think of that as sort of the communication arm of what we're trying to do. Within this, we founded the Meadow Support Project, which is an organization designed to help new users on the platform. And our 3 goals are to spread the values of peace, abundance, and liberty, to grow the Steem ecosystem, and to train and retain minnows on the platform. We have 20,000 different accounts or members of this community that we're in. It's the largest off-chain community. We're going to go scrub that list some and maybe get rid of some multi-accounts, so it's probably going to dip under 20,000 again, but it's still the largest on-chain network. We have a variety of tools that we use to help build communities around here. And then most recently, within the last month, I launched with my business partner Yaba Pimat. We launched Steem Monsters, which is sort of our blockchain version of a collectible trading card game. It's been pretty widely accepted, so thank you to those that are here that have purchased packs and that have really gotten into this game and helped write lore for the game and help write stories, and hopefully you guys are having a blast. We're working on releasing a market. We just added a variety of cryptocurrencies so that people would use block trades to purchase Steem, to help push the price of Steem up, to then purchase cards. We're going to add US dollars. We're going to make it so that people that were planning on buying cards are now going to also be able to buy an account with that money and get their cards, and hopefully that helps onboard folks. And I'm just doing the best that I can to try to I ultimately think that growth is central to how we all moon. And I keep thinking, how do we get new people? And I keep wondering, how do we keep them here? And so Steem Monsters is an outcropping of that, of, well, let's go build a game, because the game should keep people here, and maybe the folks that can't earn through blogging might be earning through tournaments and things like that, and they're participating in the chain. They came here because they wanted to do a collectible card game, and then they realized Steem has all these other awesome features. So trying to backdoor growth into the Steem ecosystem. NEX?
Hey all, I am NEX, and you probably know me better as either Cheetah or Steem Cleaners, as I am the creator and founder of those projects, and also recently Guard, which is addressing phishing. So these are the projects that are basically I've always been working on, and there's always more to do, because there's always going to be some kind of abuse or fraud on this platform, and we want to do our best to try and limit that as best as possible. So recently I've been working a lot with Steem Cleaners, and there had been a big fishing epidemic just this month and last, and that's what Guard was for, and we've been trying to address that. It's coming back a little bit, so we're going to hopefully keep tabs on that, limit that as much as possible. And with the dip in crypto prices, we have to try and figure out what we can do about our funding model, because we can no longer pay people at even a minimum wage to do this. So lots of things that needs to be done. That's me.
Carl?
Yeah, this is Carl G. Nash, and I'm the community representative for Curie, which is at Curie. Curie is a community for curators. Our primary goal is to discover and reward exceptional content on the Steem blockchain, and we have a focus on rewarding persistent and active, engaged authors who aren't receiving a lot of reward recently. And if you are familiar with Curie, Curie's been around for a long time. I just want to mention that the Curie Guidelines have been revised over the years, and I can say years plural now, I believe. And we no longer have restrictive rules saying, if you're above a certain reputation, you can't receive a Curie vote. And we've switched it to more of an open-ended interpretation. If you're an author and you're making content and haven't been receiving a lot of reward, our curators can find you and submit you for review. And we look for plagiarism and to make sure that it's not a repost that's already been out on the internet elsewhere. And if the reviewer agrees with that, we give a nice upvote. And I would also add that Curie obviously runs a witness. That's why I'm here today, and we are the number 14 witness currently. And as a witness, Curie is a community witness, meaning that all of the Curie members have a vote when it comes to witness decisions, hard forks, etc. And I believe we may be one of the only witnesses that has direct representation from minnows in the voting stakeholders for the witness. Many of the Curie curators who are voting members for the community witness are indeed minnows. I think I technically still qualify for that myself. I'm under 5,000 SP, so I think I'm a minnow. Maybe I punch outside my weight a little bit. And then besides running the witness and our curation effort, we are also developing a couple different projects for Steem blockchain. One of those is steemlookup.com, and I believe, to my knowledge, this is the most advanced search tool for finding and discovering content on Steem blockchain that's out there today. You can find that at steemlookup.com, and when you're searching for posts, you can filter by multiple tags, you can include or exclude keywords from title and post body, you can sort the results in multiple ways, and that is already out there and available for free, but development continues there. The development roadmap, we're looking at possibly connecting to some APIs that you can reverse image search directly from the search tool, connect to APIs for plagiarism and grammar check. And then the other thing that we are looking at, or rather developing right now, is a curation organizations that we are currently using internally. We are calling it Becquerel, which is a play on the Curie name. Curie is, of course, sometimes think that Curie is a shortening of curation. It's actually for Pierre and Marie Curie, and they, among many other things, discovered radioactivity, and they worked with Henry Becquerel when they discovered radioactivity. So when we were looking for a name for this new tool that we're developing that curation organizations can use, we decided to go with Becquerel to stay in the Curie vein, but to not make it so closely associated with Curie. And what this tool will allow is for members of the curation team or organization to submit posts, and it has multiple layers so that you can have people who have like reviewer privileges who can see the submissions, review them. It tracks statistics of submissions and approvals. We're currently using it internally, and we will be releasing that as an open source, freely available tool for anybody to use shortly. And we plan to integrate Steem Lookup with that tool so that you can search for posts on Steem Lookup and submit them to your curation group, all right there. And I think that's the nutshell version, and I'll go ahead and pass it on now.
Luke?
Alrighty, my name is Luke Stokes. I'm witness number 10, And I guess I'm known for the exchange transfer report, which I've been doing for, gosh, a long time now. I've been actually, today is my 2-year anniversary for being on Steem.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So yeah, I've been doing the exchange transfer report quite a bit every week. It's just a way to track who's cashing out and who's depositing money into Steem. I also do a monthly witness engagement report. So I'm a programmer by trade. I ran my own business, so I'm also entrepreneurial. But I try to be a witness that is engaged on the blockchain, but explaining technical things in simple terms. So I also have understandingblockchainfreedom.com, which just redirects to a Steemit account right now that has videos explaining blockchain, explaining cryptocurrencies. This is a big part of the Steem and Steemit ecosystem, but a lot of people don't understand it. So I really try to help with that and provide education that's interesting and entertaining, but also kind of helps people kind of get out of this bubble that they're in of understanding, just the existing systems of social media and where we're going to the future. I think it's important for witnesses to not only be technical, but also to be engaged on the blockchain and understand the social media applications that their activity as a witness, as a block producer support. So that's what I try to be, is an engaged witness who's also technical and can educate people. That's it.
Tim?
Hey everyone, my name is Tim Cliff. I'm one of the Steem witnesses, and I think I'm probably most well known for being the moderator of Steem.chat help along with Draco's. We basically funnel a lot of the incoming support requests from new and old users alike and try to do our best to get them the support that they need. Recently, a couple projects that I've been working on have been, I've been dipping my toes in Steem blockchain development and trying to get a little bit better at actually coding for the blockchains. So I developed 2 hard fork related changes for Steem-backed dollars, which I've submitted pull requests to the official repository for. So that's one of the things I've been working on. I'm also, over the past couple weeks, I've been doing a lot of work with the seed nodes for the network. Basically, the seed nodes are kind of a vital portion of the infrastructure for the Steem blockchain. It's how a lot of the blockchain nodes talk to each other and basically forward information on about the latest blocks. And there's a couple places where the seed nodes are maintained as far as the list of seed nodes, and those lists have become out of date. There were a lot of nodes from witnesses that have no longer been keeping the nodes online for a long time. There's a lot of new nodes that have come online that haven't been added to the list. So I was basically going through all the seed nodes and cleaning up the lists that are there, so that basically people will be able to go and look at the list of more active, up-to-date list of the nodes that are available. And then probably the other main thing that I spend a lot of time on is I try to have my ear to the ground as far as knowing all the different types of changes that people are asking for, understanding what the community's needs and wants are, and also providing my own input on the changes that I think are good and bad for the platform. So I've got a couple projects that I'm working on right now. I'd classify them as jokingly top secret. I generally don't like to talk about things I'm working on until they're ready. So I guess more to come as I continue working on the things that I am.
Well, that's actually a pretty good intro to the next segment, Tim, because I think the witnesses, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think the witnesses are all very much aligned with what Steemit schools are now for velocity, for communities, and for SMTs. And then I don't think that I've heard too much conversation about what comes on after that. And so I think it's important to try to get that conversation going now, so that, when these things hit, we're not like, okay, now what? I think that there are a variety of things that are on the blockchain that, like, different groups and different perspectives and different interests want to see happen. And since you were just describing, you try to keep your ear to the grindstone there. Like, what do you think are some of the things that, get your crystal ball out and let's go look. I don't know the exact date, but let's say it's 6 months from now. So we're at January 1st of 2019. SMTs just hit, and communities got put in place shortly before that, and velocity's been going strong for a while. What do you think ends up being the next thing that we need to be doing?
So with my crystal ball in hand, I'd say the prediction that I have is that once we have communities and SMTs launched, we're going to see an explosion of people coming in and building really awesome apps for Steem. And I think probably one of the main things that we're going to need to focus on next after we get this framework in place is improving the development architecture and infrastructure, and what are the best ways to get all the different apps and tools that people are building working together in a cohesive way so that there's a lot of synergy there, and if someone launches a new SMT, that they have a handful of tools that they can pull from other SMT developers that would basically prevent them from having to reinvent the wheel. And I'm guessing there's probably going to be some infrastructure changes, even possibly on the blockchain level, as far as, once these get launched, figuring out how to best support them and, what infrastructure is needed in order for the SMT creators and community leaders to have the most flexibility to do what they want with those tools.
Is that just a central repository, or is that just documentation? What does that look like? What would be built to support that?
It's probably all of the above. I guess I don't have any major specifics as far as how it would be accomplished. I just see probably the biggest need after these tools are launched is basically that there's going to be a lot of great work going on from independent developers, and I guess the overall theme would be how can we make all this work that the developers are doing work together in a way that adds the most value and gives people the most resources to pull from when they're trying to do similar things.
Awesome. Luke, what do you see if you don't mind, please grab your crystal ball and say, what do you think that we're going to run into and need to start thinking about now for challenges that we as witnesses are going to have?
Oh man, I'm calling myself out here. I think the last month I talked about the Eternal September and wanting to do a post on that, and I haven't done it yet. But it's just the idea that we're going to have an influx of users who don't understand the culture, they don't understand the community, they don't understand kind of what the expectations are. There may be another wave of, wait, free money? I'm into free money. Let's get some free money. And it's our job, I think, to educate them and encourage them and help them set healthy expectations of what Steem actually is, and then what the different applications built on top of Steem do and how they work and where the money comes from. So it's a big job of education from my perspective to teach people about value itself. This new paradigm of value is a shared story that we all agree on, and it's represented by cryptocurrency. And so I think, if all this stuff is successful, if all this stuff launches, just like Tim said, I do think we're going to have a rush of new applications being built by developers. I totally agree with him that we need to have better or continue improving our tooling for helping those developers get onboarded. I think that the DevTools website is very helpful that Steemit Incorporated has put together, and we can keep improving that. But I think as a community, we can take a responsibility to say, hey, I can do posts on explaining how Steem works. Even though I may have done them many, many times in the past, when there's a new influx of users, it's our responsibility, again, to go back to the basics, explain how things work, and go from there.
Just through posting? Like, how do we build an education system that's going to reach the eternal September? How do we keep that going? What does that look like?
That's a great question. My perspective is you have to go to people in the medium that they're comfortable with. So there are obviously going to be a bunch of people on Steem directly. So yes, or Steemit. So posting on Steemit for sure. But also other places, Medium, YouTube, Reddit, Twitter, all these places where people are talking about the applications that we're building and specifically those applications themselves. So there might be an application that just shows posts done within that application. Well, we might all want to go ahead and sign up there and start posting within that application to help people understand how the Steem blockchain works underneath the hood for that application. So it's really just a matter of going to where people are having the conversations and then helping lead those conversations with our experience.
Right. Nashter, do you want to talk about your crystal ball predictions and what you think we ought to focus on?
So again, this is Carl G. Nash for Curie. it's really, it's one of those things where it's kind of cheesy to say, well, let's see what actually happens when communities come out and when the hive mind layer is here and when oracles and SMTs come out. But I honestly feel that until those are in place and we see how that changes the Steem ecosystem, it might be a little too early to talk about particular fixes or changes or priorities, because I think that all these things I just mentioned have the chance to solve a lot of the problems that people see with Steem blockchain. But I would say, just on a broader level, that I think that we need to figure out how to align the market incentives to better to make proof of brain, you know, an actuality, and to give a market incentive for large SP holders to use their stake in a way that advances proof of brain. I don't think that that's the current situation, and let me make it clear that Curie does not have a position on bid bots, and I'm certainly not saying that they are a bad thing. But when I say this next bit, but if you look at Steem from the perspective of a large potential investor, if you're going to invest a chunk of money in Steem, you've got, you know, 3 basic routes to go to realize a return on your investment. You can post and self-vote, and that runs the risk of flags in the community basically taking away any return that you could get from that, and we've actually seen that with some investors who came in and posted and self-voted and then get flagged down. You can use your SP to try to make returns through curation, and currently that is actually not returning a good return on your investment at all. Or you can delegate your SP in return for money to a vote seller or bid bot, and that is clearly the best way to make money back. And so I don't completely leaving aside the question of whether or not bid bots are good or bad, I think that there needs to be some way to align the market incentives to give another option to a big investor, because, you know, for this to really take off, it needs to be more than just people coming to join and make money by posting content. We also need large investors to come, and we need a palatable way for them to make money that also aligns with the underlying premise of proof of brain. I'm not saying I've got the magic ball to say what that answer is, but personally I feel like that's the big question. You know, how do we make it so that the incentives align? And I guess that's what I got.
Do you have thoughts on what that might look like? I mean, I think
go ahead.
Well, you know, some of the people that are really angry at bid bots might not know what it looked like before that. I mean, the trending that we had here was the same 10 authors over and over. Maybe it was 15, but, you know, vote swapping was happening, vote buying was happening. Like, those things were happening, but it just wasn't like a transparent activity. And it was making it so that it was a very, very narrow range of people that were having their voice heard. And now we have a system where, you know, the people that have money to spend on bid bots are able to go get their post viewed, and that doesn't quite feel awesome to everybody. To me, it feels like a major improvement over what we had in the last round, but there's still a lot of content that we don't necessarily like that's getting through. So I think, to me, it sounds like we have two kind of concerns there. One is, like, how do we ensure that the best content is getting the most rewards? And then two, like, do you have some kind of vision of what is an alternative resting spot for a investor to go place their SP? You know, one example of which is, like, maybe we have an account that, you know, we have a savings account. Maybe that savings account doesn't actually regain voting power, but grows at a faster rate. So that maybe we have like a staking account that has a higher percentage interest on it, and that could get to the investor concern that we want them, like, buying Steem and holding Steem, and that benefits the ecosystem, but maybe they don't get to sell their vote. It would basically go to, you know, a tiny fraction to every post that goes out there.
And I think that's a great suggestion and a possible way forward. And I think that something like that, some kind of incentive to hold on to your SP and not delegate it, not vote it, but if you've got a huge chunk of it, still earn, you know, maybe it won't be the same return as a bid bot, as delegating to a bid bot, but if it's at least a better return than you can get currently by following a curation trail, that, you know, investors who are interested in the long-term health of the platform would at least have an option to make a decent chunk of change and and have a large stake that is kept vested in the form of Steem power, which is good for the health of the entire Steem blockchain. So I think that is one potential way forward. And then the other thing too, why I started this off saying that this is kind of jumping the gun, because potentially communities and oracles that can verify the identity, that an account holder is an actual real person, and an SMT that's associated with that community, which is only distributed to people who have been verified by the oracle, that actually might be the solution right there. So again, until we actually see how this plays out, and until we see how developers use these new tools that are being provided by Steemit, potentially that solution is already coming,
How do you see people, like we launch a new SMT, and that SMT to me, I'm kind of stuck on this idea that Moore's law works, and that as you double the number of people, you quadruple the value of the token, and so the trick then is to go get people to adopt that token. If we're seeing SMTs as a way to sort of change or improve both distribution and sort of how we share rewards to content creators, how do you foresee getting widespread adoptions of the SMTs that are designed to do that? What do we need to do as a community to sort of either prep people? Is this an education thing? Like what kind of incentives would there be to go get people like really excited about Curie Coin or MSP Coin or OCD Coin, sort of three of the bigger curation groups that are out there? Like how do you think, what else would we need to do to get mass adoption or a growing adoption to help with tokens specifically designed for curation initiatives?
Man, I may have to kind of punt on this one, just because I don't fully know how this is going to look when it comes out. But I feel that when an SMT is attached to a community that's already a large established community, and MSP is maybe the biggest example. I don't know how large it is now, but I mean, you guys have got thousands and thousands of members. You'll already have a built-in base, but I feel like the bigger part of this question is, how do you create a community so that when new users onboard, the user experience is better than it is currently, and there isn't such a steep learning curve? And I feel that the community a lot with that, because an individual community can, to a certain extent, kind of control how the content appears within that community, is my understanding, that the moderators within the community can, approve or disapprove certain content from appearing in the community, and the community can kind of make its own rules for how it operates. And I don't think you have to look that much farther than Reddit to see that there's a working model of people that aren't even getting paid to do this, but are putting in a tremendous amount of time and energy because they're into whichever particular thing the subreddit is focusing on. Communities can be like that, but with the added bonus of making some money on top of it, which has always been the attractive thing about Steem. But there's just currently a very steep learning curve for new users, and hopefully a community can kind of help that out, so that when people come on board, they're not just jumping into the big pool of the Steem blockchain writ large. They're jumping into a community that is focused on an issue that they know about and care about, and they're not being exposed to a lot of what we could call the problems of Steem blockchain, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, an individual community can say that content can't have votes by a bid bot for it to appear, is my understanding of the way it could work. So I think a lot of these solutions really just are going to rest on the success of a community in bringing in a broad user base. And I honestly feel that some individual communities could end up, and individual SMTs, there's at least the possibility that these end up being more valuable than the underlying Steem token. And that may be a misunderstanding, but that was, when I'm thinking through it, it seems like that's at least a possibility. So maybe another developer can speak to that. I'm not a developer, so maybe I'm talking over my head here.
All right, so some good thoughts on curation. NEX, do you want to chime in? Will you put take out your crystal ball and tell us what you think we're working with 6 months from now?
Sure. I have a laundry list of things that need to be done, quote unquote, in the future. And some of this, or actually most of it, has actually been touched on already. We've talked about things like onboarding, education, retention, better UI for communities. So basically, front end, back end, community. Although I think some guy's probably going to talk a bit more about the back end because he in his introduction briefly mentioned that, hey, yeah, we got like 600 gigs of RAM being used. And I think that's going to be a huge problem when SMTs come out, because that's going to increase state by it could almost linearly increase state from what it is right now, which could be a big issue. But I will talk about something else, going a little on the lines of what Curie, the guys from Curie have been talking about. And I want to see more focus on addressing abuse, and that's abuse both real and subjective. So Nashter talked a bit about this, I guess, more subjective abuse. At Steam Cleaners, we talk about, or we focus on what I would call more so like fraud or real abuse, something that everyone can basically agree on. Not just like, oh, this is way too rewarded. It's like, no, this guy tried to steal the identity of someone else and get paid for it. And that's something that we try to address. So I think it would be nice to see better tools to address basically identity. And that's not necessarily to say personhood, but that's more to say like a virtual identity or a virtual reputation. So that when we see someone, we can actually, better than the current reputation, understand what that person's identity is. Like most other tools have this. So Twitter has little verified check marks saying, yeah, that's actually the person that you're looking at. And no, he's not giving away Ethereum or whatever. And I would also like to see better ways to, in terms of the UI, something like the VoteBot issue is, we call it an issue, it may or may not be an issue, but I would like to see, right now it's like, sure, if you do VoteBots, you basically are almost guaranteed a reward. Like it's almost stupid not to. You can use a VoteBot and you get away with it and you make money and it's profitable. It would be nice to see some kind of downvote culture come back. So adding downvote incentives or removing the disincentive is high on my priority list. So that would mean something like if you downvote, you would, because a downvote is basically a tiny upvote to everything else, maybe that should give you a tiny bit of curation too. And in addition to that, we should have separate downvote pools. That means that if you downvote, that doesn't take away your ability to upvote. So you still upvote 10 times a day, but you can also now downvote 10 times a day. And you can and should use that. And then you can use that to say, when you see identity theft, you're like, oh, I could downvote that, but I could self-vote myself and get like $10. So why would I downvote that? Someone else would take care of that. But if you had no disincentive, it's like, okay, I can still self-up myself, but I can also downvote that, and it costs me nothing to do that. It literally costs me nothing to just flag that identity theft. So then do it. And then everyone else, it starts becoming that culture. It's like, no, this is identity theft, downvote that. Or this VoteBot is way out of whack, and this person spent $1,000 on it, and I disagree with that reward, so I'm just going to downvote that. And then suddenly the person buying those VoteBots is going to think, hey, wait a minute, I spent so much money, and then people are downvoting my VoteBots. I didn't get my return on investment. So maybe next time I won't spend the same amount of money. Maybe I'll just spend a little bit, and then there's going to be a real market for VoteBots, not just a unidirectional market, not just a market where it's always good to buy votes, but you have to think about it a second. If you buy too many votes, people are going to downvote you, and you're going to lose your profit. So it's going to actually have an upward force and a downward force, which is needed for a real market.
Yeah, I feel like once we moved away from the other reward system, and I just blanked on the name, exponential rewards. Once we moved away from exponential rewards, we're like, there was some level of consensus built into that, and we moved to linear rewards. We lost kind of consensus approval, which was part of the idea of doing that. But then it wasn't all awesome. There were some negative aspects to that, particularly in terms of spam content and stolen content. That seems to have sort of grown exponentially. And then also a couple examples of like heavily bid-bot purchased articles that aren't in the best interest of the Steem community. So there are a variety of these kind of weird examples out there that I think, I'm a fan of this downvoting idea. Like, Tim, I know that you've run some polls in the witness groups. Have you run a poll of should there be a separate downvoting pool? I can't remember off the top of my head.
We've talked about it, but I don't have anything that I can share on that topic. But I think in general, the voices that I hear is that there's pretty broad support for it, but I think there's still some concerns for it too, which is, if we open up the floodgates for downvoting, is that really a good thing? I mean, we're talking about all the positive things here, but there's obviously a negative side to it as well, just as far as, it can cause retention and user happiness issues if there's a lot of downvoting. And I do think a couple of people have said it in chat too, that the biggest issue with this whole thing is retaliation. And I think before we head too far down the path of incentivizing or encouraging more downvoting, we still need to kind of have a good talk about how to deal with the retaliation issue, because I think with any downvoting solution that is being proposed, I don't know a good technical way to deal with that. It's more of a community problem to solve, and so I think a good healthy discussion on how to deal with retaliation is definitely necessary before we head too far down that path.
I think that's why the idea of the original voting power is here. You know how your upvotes share the same pool as your downvote, so that's to disincentivize you from, say, retaliation downvoting, because you're affecting your own voting power that you could otherwise use to upvote your friends, for example.
Well, and that all makes sense under that made sense under sort of the more exponential reward systems, but it seems like there's still some things aren't quite. Linear has some major advantages and it has some of these disadvantages. And Tim, I think you're describing the very real possibility of unintended consequences on the blockchain of, one of which would be now everybody has a whole bunch of money to go, or a whole bunch of power to go retaliate the hell out of one another and sort of hurt user experience. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make any changes out here without suddenly altering a lot of different things. I want to give some guy a chance to sort of just get his crystal ball out, and then I want to kind of come back to this and see. I don't know. I think downvoting has broad consensus, maybe not perfect consensus among the top 20. So I kind of want to come back to that and see if that might be one of the first things that, after SMTs, or does SMTs kind of relieve this discussion? But actually, I'll go next for what I think we need to be doing 6 months from now. I have a very narrow focus on this platform, and my focus is really add new users and keep them here. And if there are people that have lots of skills here, and but I think those are the two that are constantly on my brain. How do we get new users here, and how do we keep them here? And so, to me, the Meadow support project as a way to train people, I think, is a major initiative, and I'll certainly keep spending tons of time trying to get that to happen. And then secondarily, I see Steem monsters, and maybe not even just Steem monsters, but trying to figure out other ways to utilize the chain to build games and entertainment. Entertainment as an industry is one of the most highly valued industries on the planet. So if we can make ways of selling entertainment through this ecosystem, I think that there's lots of people that are willing to spend tons of money on it. So whether that's through tokenizing things, whether that's through non-fungible tokens or fungible tokens, things that are collectible or not collectible, things that are just different projects that are entertaining. Are there ways that we could sell concerts? Are there ways that we could make content accessible but only for a paid system? There are things that are here that I think if we can sell content through this ecosystem would help raise the price of what we're doing, because entertainment is so highly valued. So those are the kinds of roads that I plan on going down, and rather than spending my time focused on the blockchain, I'm sort of grateful that we have Steemit and the developers there to make sure that this thing can scale, and then if I can put some trust in them that it will scale, then I see my purpose and my focus of just trying to find as many ways to get as many people here as possible. Some guy, do you want to grab your crystal ball and tell us what you see 6 months down the road?
I'm not sure what to see 6 months down the road. I mean, we still don't have a real time frame on HF20. I mean, we got soon, but how soon is soon? I mean, we have been waiting like over a year now. Soon could be 6 months from now, for all we know. So, hopefully, I think the communities could help it. I remember there was some talk about community moderators. That might be a better solution than the current flag wars.
So do you just think that the oracles and the community aspect that's coming will take care of some of this naturally?
Yeah, with the whole community moderators, that can help with. It ends up feeling maybe a bit more like Reddit, which has its pros and cons. It does make these communities a bit more, maybe a little bit more centralized than just our normal tags. But on the other hand, it could increase content quality on the blockchain. For example, certain communities might have good moderators, which will keep away the spam and ensure that you see good quality content rather than just constant bid bots.
So what do you all right, this kind of goes out to the group. Where do you see some of like the biggest needs? So outside of the projects that we're working on, like what do you wish somebody was addressing out there, or that like was getting improved faster or better? It keeps finding quality content keeps coming up. What else are the sort of major things that we think are sort of holding back the growth of Steem as an ecosystem?
Hiding re-steams.
So the condenser interface and having more control over what your wall looks like.
Yeah, the problem is that Steemit is kind of falling behind. I mean, condenser. We've got competing blockchains like Golos, which have a much better user experience than us, which is, it's pretty sad, because obviously Steem Inc. has a lot more money, a lot more resources, a lot more developers than Golos, so they should be able to do all of this.
Well, it's been a while since I've logged into Golos. The last time that I tried to log into Golos, I had a not great user experience. I thought it was pretty hard to navigate. The site didn't even respond all that well. It might look pretty, but just from the little that I dabbled with it, I was like, I don't know how I can use this, because like I can't get a post to even post out there, regardless of the fact that it wasn't in Russian.
Yeah, part of the problem is if you use Google Chrome, it tries to automatically translate. And if the automatic translate runs, it actually breaks a lot of the page. I'm not really sure why. If you turn off your Google Translate for the Golos website, it stops things getting broken.
All right. Well, I don't know if I tried multiple browsers. Maybe I'll go look again, because I do think that there's value in kind of checking out what the other chains are doing and seeing if there aren't ways that we can import some of that here. So I think finding content is one. Like, where else do you guys wish that things were improved? Or like, man, if Steem only had this, it would be such a better place around here.
That's a pretty broad question.
Well, I'm trying, to me, I'm in this weird spot, right? Like, I'm a witness and I'm trying to facilitate this discussion, but like in no way, shape, or form am I the boss of anybody else here. Like I try to keep these things pretty purposefully broad, because I want you all to be able to answer and talk about the things that you find important, and have it like, I don't want to guide the topic down to like very specific things that interest me. I'm trying to keep it so that you guys can talk about what's on your brain and what you think is the most important, because it's all of us collectively that make this happen.
Yeah, I mean, I love when you open it up to questions for people in the audience. We got this great community here, and one of the things that I'd love to see people focus on a lot more is that the witnesses, the people that secure the blockchain, the block producers, we're supposed to answer to the community, the token holders. They vote us into the positions we have. We're not really supposed to just decide amongst ourselves as block producers. So if people in the chat have questions for us, I'd love for them to put them out there, and we could have some great conversation about that, because each one of us have different perspectives on what we could be doing, and that's important. But ultimately, I want to hear from everyone in the audience.
Well, Surfer Marley's asking the question of, what do you think? Or how can the community, meaning the average user, what can they best contribute towards the growth of Steem? So how does somebody that's not a whale contribute to the growth of this place? You know, I think some of this comes down to, we're all going to the same moon. So if we're not the most followed person, and we don't have the most Steem power, what can we do to help make an impact here?
Can I clarify the question? Because I asked here, like, what do we mean by growth? A lot of people think growth just means a whole bunch more users, and maybe that's okay with them. But a lot of other people think growth means increasing the value of the Steem token that secures the blockchain. The value of the token is why the witnesses do what they do, because they get rewarded in a valuable token. If the token isn't valuable, then the witnesses go to other projects that are more interesting, you know? So when we say growth, do we even have agreement on what that means? For a lot of people, investors, it means a valuable token. For other people, it means more users on my application as a developer. For others, it means my community is bigger, so I have more fun talking to more people. Like, we can't even agree necessarily on what does growth mean.
So why don't you give us a definition of growth that, at least for this conversation, you'd like us to work on?
Honestly, all three of those. I tried to outline them. Developers want to really, like, developers want to grow the number of people using their application, because maybe it's a for-profit application. Investors want to increase the value of their holdings, and community engagement, bloggers, people that love building their own, brand, their personal brand, they want to grow the number of readers and engaged community members in their communities. So they're different forms. So that just means adding more users that are engaged on Steemit or whatever, or DLive or whatever. So I think there are three different personas. I think NEX, you had a discussion about this a while back, like thinking about the personas involved and how they have different definitions of what they want to accomplish, what they see as valuable and growth.
All right, I want to write these three down again. Can you summarize the three types of growth one more time for me, and I'll take notes and put it into chat here.
Yeah, sure. And there may be more. These are just the three that I'm thinking of top of mind. But you've got developers that want to grow the user base of their specific application. So like an example might be more people using Steem Monsters, because that makes Steem Monsters more profitable as a company. You might have community members, people who are building communities, they're bloggers, they're people creating video content, they're doing podcasts, and they want to grow their brand of their community, and maybe they're selling products or doing some other value add beyond that. But they essentially want more engaged community members, Steemit people replying to comments, that kind of stuff. And then you've got investors. Investors want to see the value of the Steem token increase, and they want to raise the return on investment of their Steem. A lot of them are just cryptocurrency speculators, so they want to see growth in the value of the Steem token.
So I've broken this down a couple times to go say, what are the four different stakeholders? So I think we're kind of on the same page here. Of we have, I think Steemit as a company is a major stakeholder. You have developers that are building their own applications. You have, I consider merchants being a group of people that are buying and selling things and opening storefronts here. And I think we have sort of the active content creators, the bloggers, and the people that are making higher quality content. Those are sort of my four go-to groups, and I think we have some good overlap. And we're talking about what are each one of them looking for, and how do we address what they want, and how can we as elected officials try to get everybody that piece that they're looking for. And I think Tim keeps trying to talk here.
What I was thinking is, one thing that I really like about Litecoin is their website. I'm going to post it in the chat, litecoin.com. Take a look at this and scroll down. What would be really nice is if we had something like this on steem.io, which showed off all the different ways to manage your money, all the different exchanges, all the different tools you can use and all the different interfaces like DLive, DVideo, DTube, all that stuff. Like, check out the Litecoin website. I think if Steem.io could show some of the most well-known apps, the most useful ones, that could be a better, because things like the Steem Tools website just kind of has absolutely everything on there.
Is that the so that starts looking like some centralization, right? Are we going to be comfortable with Steem sort of picking winners and losers, or maybe we can just have?
There, Agro.
I'm here. Oh, yeah. You can't hear me, Luke?
No, I got you now. You just were dead for a little bit.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So shoot. Now I'm sidetracked. Are we going to be okay with Steem sort of picking winners and losers? Like, I think that starts going down a road of some level of centralization of Steem then deciding, okay, this app is good, we will support this, and then it gets, you know, if we're somehow driving traffic to that site, they hear that. Hello? Chris?
We're back.
All right, I don't know. People don't like me talking about Steem. Yeah, I think the challenge is that do we really want centralization from Steem choosing winners and losers and which products we like and which apps we want to support and help grow? I mean, it seems a little nerve-wracking to me to think, you know, Steem has the lead website, and then they're the ones that are showcasing or choosing which of these gets showcased.
But they should, because the thing is, the main site everyone uses is Steemit.com, or potentially Steem.io. And the point is that it could always link to something like Steem Tools for a full list of stuff. And these are just some of the best apps that everyone uses, just to kind of showcase all the things that Steem can do that is not just Steemit.com.
So maybe if there were some common criteria so that, you know, there's a benefit of like trying to market these things and get the word out, but I also think that you need sort of common criteria to help make it so that, you know, Ned isn't just picking a few of his friends and those are the groups that are getting the support. We want it so that the apps that are getting used the most are the ones that end up like getting that extra attention or focus from or like how we best showcase this community and its developers.
Well, I think the thing is that you kind of have to showcase the most popular ones, because they may be popular, but not everyone knows about them, and they help you to know that Steemit isn't just Steemit. Steem is a whole collection of different interfaces. You can put videos up, you can stream music, you can stream your video like Twitch. But a lot of people don't know this. They don't know that you can do these things. And it's important for Steem to choose the most popular ones, because they're also kind of the safest. If they were to put up every little app that just came out yesterday, it's kind of dangerous, because they're going to get people getting their keys stolen and all sorts of horrible things.
All right, so we have about 20 more minutes here. I want to make sure that there's time for some wrap-up comments. So I think we have maybe 10 or 15 minutes of just some general comments, some questions. If you guys want to take things out of the chat, I'd welcome those. What do you think are some things that we're not discussing that we ought to be? Like, what have I missed in this discussion? What key thing or what key things should we be educating people about, or what key things should we be talking about? What have I missed that you think is important?
I was kind of thinking maybe it would be worth talking about investors a little bit more. I mean, the whole cryptocurrency markets have gone down. It's just really a great opportunity for people who are entering back into cryptocurrency markets as it comes back up to decide on what coin they're going to buy. And this is a great opportunity for us to kind of be promoting the cryptocurrency, Steem itself, and how valuable that is. Because if that goes up, I feel every single other category benefits from it. You know, the people building applications get more people excited about it. The people building their brand and community get more people that show up because they heard about Steem on the news because it's this great cryptocurrency. So I mentioned in the chat, I'd love to hear NEX's thoughts, because I think it was you. I mean, a lot of people have talked about these different personas and how we can help.
That was me.
Was that you?
No, I don't think so.
It might have been Jesta. So sorry for putting that out there wrong, but the idea of like, how can we help investors and grow the value of Steem? And Tim Cliff, you've talked about this for over a year now, you know, the $10 Steem. Maybe you could chime in as well. If you want
to. So how do we do that? Like, you know, I think you're describing somewhat of being cheerleaders, but I also don't want to be in the category of technical analyst, and I don't want to be in the category of financial advisor. So how do you think you can balance the difference between cheerleading for this platform and talking about the real benefits without you know, taking on the liability of suggesting somebody sell their kidney and buy Steem with it?
That's a good question. That is part of walking the fine line, right? I don't think fanboying or cheerleading is necessarily the answer. It's really just discussing facts, education about the Steem cryptocurrency, the token, what it does, the benefits it has over other systems, and being very clear that this is not investment advice. Obviously, we always have to do that. But I think it is an important thing to say, look, here are these other projects that are doing all kinds of stuff and, you know, or claiming to do all kinds of stuff and not really providing great, you know, value to everyday human beings. And then here's this other token that is powering all these different social applications on a blockchain. So it's really just an education thing for me. And I think there are a lot of investors that want this education. So really it's something that we all personally can do to grow our own understanding of cryptocurrency in order to contribute. And that's why, you know, I do things like understanding blockchain freedom, and, you know, I try to help with education, because I think the more we as a community understand cryptocurrency, the more we understand the token that secures and creates all the value we enjoy, the better we can talk about it to our friends, our family, just explaining like, okay, where does the money come from? I wish everybody had a great answer to that. And the more we can answer that question, I think the more interest we're going to get from investors.
Okay, you know, I've had a phrase in my head for years now of the universe teaches through the delta, and what I mean by that is constantly what we'll learn. It like the value by itself in a vacuum isn't as important as the value relative to something else. So to me, it's sort of like trying to go through and compare. Here are the benefits, the pros and cons of something like Ethereum, and then here are the pros and cons of something like Steem. Let's go talk about what advantages we have and who might benefit from those advantages. So it seems like a bit of a way to go cheerlead, but it can also draw attention to the blocktivity.info stuff of like, look at how many transactions we're doing, and let's go compare that to literally all other blockchains combined.
Yeah, that's a great example.
We got about 15 minutes left. So other thoughts on what haven't I hit on? What should we be talking about that I haven't brought up, or that you haven't had a second to address?
At some point in time, we should probably discuss the ramifications of SMTs in terms of how that's going to affect our hardware, because SMTs, if every person can be a part of an SMT and they have the same state space as Steem tokens, then that is for every SMT that's created, that's potentially a linear increase in the amount of storage space that we need for state, which currently is, like some guy said, for the whole history is like 600 gigs. For just the consensus state, it's about 45. But if we linearly increase that 45, that could become very dangerous.
With that, though, what percentage is posts and comments and what percentage is just transfers and transactions? Because I imagine that if you're going to post something within an SMT community, it might be something that you would have probably already posted on Steemit anyway. So my concern would be more about the new transfers that are taking place. And my understanding is those are relatively small as far as the data, right?
Yes, it's the consensus state, basically. It's the 45 gigs.
Oh, I got you. So you're saying just the things that exchanges themselves would be concerned about.
Yep, that's because it's basically you'd have to hold voting in the same way as you would Steem, which means that you need to hold consensus of a post who is going to be getting what of this SMT, which is potentially dangerous.
Yep, gotcha. So yeah, that's definitely something that'll grow, but not so much in terms of like every SMT essentially doubles everything as far as posts and comments. That's where a lot of the 500-600 gigs worth of data that a full node would have, for example.
Right. The full node may be okay for a while, but if we add one SMT that's equivalent to Steem, we could potentially go from 45 to 90 overnight.
Fun times.
I'm getting some feedback that it's saying that the server might not be online. I mean, I can hear. I can hear people here. I mean, Discord, not Steem. I'm
noticing there's no chat activity.
Yeah.
I did notice that, and I tried pasting an image before, and it wasn't uploading. I think something's wrong with the chat right now, sadly.
All right. Well, that's less than awesome. I guess Discord doesn't like us. The recording is still happening, so we're still going on here. I don't know if people can still hear on DLive or if they can still hear on MSP-waves. I think, especially with like a little bit of technical difficulties, why don't we wrap up and sort of hopefully people can give some closing thoughts on what they. I try to keep this very open. So what is it that you would want people walking away from this discussion from? What is it that, the people that are listening need to hold? What do they need to like? What do you wish that they knew? What is a call to action that you would hope that they would do? So those are some of the thoughts that I have. Somebody want to kick that off?
I can start with a plug for Steem cleaners. I think in the current meantime situation, before we get something like communities and moderation and more official guidance on how we should actually do this, I personally think Steem cleaners is one of the best tools that we have in order to tackle and keep at bay the problems that could occur. And I think we're doing a good job, but I think we do need more support, especially with the current downturn in price. It's becoming really, really hard to keep up with that. We can no longer pay people that work for us a minimum wage, so it's becoming more voluntary. And there's the incentive to do this is dropping and dropping rapidly. And I would say if you believe that Steem Cleaners is doing a good job, just 1 out of your 10 votes per day. You have 10 full-powered votes. Take 1 and go upvote a Steem Cleaners log. That's all it takes to help us out. And we do the hard work. All you have to do is just toss us an upvote every now and then. And I think that would be very, very. It would go a long way because all of that money goes back to the community. No one pockets anything that they don't deserve. I don't take anything. I don't take a single cent from that fund. Everything goes back to the community. So just consider that, and I would hope to see some more upvotes on Steem Cleaners.
I absolutely second that. I've got Steem Cleaners set up in my auto voter that I use from Steam Voter, and every time they post, they get a 100% upvote for me because it is a critically important tool for the platform. It's something that I remember before it existed, so I am glad it exists now. I guess I can go next if you want.
Go for it, Luke.
Yeah, I think for me, I kind of harping on this a lot, I guess, just because I've been thinking a lot about cryptocurrency lately, but it's just the idea that I would love people to come away from this conversation remembering that the Steem cryptocurrency drives all the value that we like to see here. It's the main reason that we're here and not some other community. And so I would love for us all to take personal responsibility to understand cryptocurrency and specifically Steem and where the value comes from, because this is our blockchain, this is our community, and Steem is driving all the value that we see here. So if we want to understand the value of our own community, then it's our responsibility to understand cryptocurrency, at least at a basic level, so we can explain it to our friends, our family, people that want to know more about how this thing actually works. Because eventually you're going to come to that, where does the value come from, this question. And I'd love for us each individually to have our own style of answering that question and educating people, because I really do think that cryptocurrency is a path to the future, global nonviolent consensus, and a way to control our own store of value. And that's a beautiful, amazing thing. And Steem plays a big part in it.
Some guy, Nashter, Tim? What would you want people walking away from, Carl?
This is Nashter, community representative for Curie. First off, let me 100% second that Steem Cleaners is an extremely important initiative, and as a curator myself, and as all the Curie curators know, when we're hunting for new posts, we find this kind of abuse all the time. And the Steem Cleaners report page is no stranger for me. And so first off, yes, please everybody support Steem Cleaners. Very important to the platform. I think that curation efforts are just as important now as they ever have been. And Agro, you'd mentioned that if you've been on the platform for a long time, that before the changes to the reward distribution, it used to just be a handful of whales that dominated all the content. And so there is certainly more diversity of content creators getting paid out now than there used to be. I still think there's room for improvement there, and I feel like all the different curation efforts on the blockchain, and I'm not just going to say Curie is the only one or the best, OCD, there's a number of other ones, and I've seen Utopian.io is actually even getting involved with assisting some curation efforts now. But pick your favorite curation efforts, and what I would like to see is, even if you don't have a large vote that you can use to support the curation effort, I would love to see more engagement in the content that gets curated by these curation efforts. All these different curation groups are taking the time to check for plagiarism, to check for this abuse, and to try to highlight actual real content by real people that adds value to the Steem blockchain. And when we're talking about user retention, a lot of times I'll come and visit a post that Curie has upvoted or OCD has upvoted, and I'll check back in, and there isn't a single comment besides the one I left as a curator, or besides the one that the OCD curator left. And so I would say that something that any user can do to help user retention and engagement is to go, pick your curation trail and go through and actually leave some comments on the posts that are upvoted, and have some engagement with these authors so that people aren't just posting into a vacuum. And I think that goes a long way, and it's something everybody can do, even if you're not a major stakeholder. Take it upon yourself a little bit to help increase engagement on this platform, and I think that goes a long way. And so I guess that's the thought I would like to leave people with.
All right, thank you, Carl. Some guy, Tim Cliff?
I don't think I have much to say.
Okay, rock on. And Tim Cliff, any closing thoughts for us? He might actually be having some technical difficulties. Okay, well, I guess I'll go. This is Agro. I just want to see this place grow. And that, there's lots of the different versions of what growth is, but I'm very focused on new users. And I want to see user growth, and I want to see user retention. And I think prices are going to be a major part of that, and some of that is out of our hand. But community outreach is not. That is something that we can do. And so for me, my current biggest endeavor right now is just trying to get Steem Monsters going and to create a really compelling story, create a compelling game, and trying to get the fighting of that up and running, and try to create a good UI. And our goal is going to be to start taking that out and really trying to dive into the Magic the Gathering and the Hearthstone audiences, and try to get the gamers to want to play games here, and then to also show some of the entrepreneurs that a good salesperson and a good dev can make a huge dent, and just trying to understand that the costs don't have to be as high. I mean, you don't have to start from scratch. You have like a pre-existing ecosystem here. You have a pre-existing blockchain. There's a lot of problems that have been solved. There's useful tools like blocktrades.us. They're already out there and they have an API. I mean, there's a bunch of things that you can tap into here that can help. It limits how much work you have to do. So, you know, I hope that you guys will play the game and support the game. But I'm also hoping that folks will, try to just tell a friend or two, hey, I know you haven't been checking out cryptocurrencies or they're down, but this is a good time to start coming in and trying to recruit a couple people and bring them to the blockchain experience, and let's go onboard some new users, because I think that that's the thing that'll have the most direct impact on the value of our token. So I'd like to go thank the top 20 witnesses for having joined us. I'd like to thank the audience for having joined us today. I know it's the Saturday of leading into 4th of July for the Americans, so I appreciate the folks giving of their weekend to be here. You've been listening to msp-waves radio. I was the moderator for this discussion. This is Agrode. This is the Steem witness panel. We do these every single last Saturday of the month. They're always at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 1500 UTC. In a couple hours, we're going to have Crimson Clad come on and do some Meadow education, as well as give us some synth waves to go ride the waves with. And otherwise, I hope you guys have a glorious weekend. I hope that we can all find crypto prices coming back up. I know that will help quite a bit of us. And thank you all for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community. And vote for witnesses. If you enjoyed the things that you heard today, please go vote for the people here, and be sure to be an active participant on the chain in choosing elected officials, and being an active member of how do we add more value to the blockchain. So thanks so much, guys. I appreciate your time. Thank you for being here, and I hope you guys all have a glorious Saturday afternoon.
Thanks, Agrode.